This is the kind of video that should be shown to sons when they grow up. Not as a joke, not as entertainment, and not to scare them, but to prepare them for reality. And for those who don't have sons, it's a lesson meant for you right now. Because what we are talking about here is not fantasy, not theory, and not moral preaching. It is pattern recognition. If a man builds a relationship with a woman connected to certain professions, there is a very high chance he will not like the outcome. Not always, not in every single case, but often enough that ignoring it becomes naive. This is not about exceptions. This is about trends that repeat themselves again and again. There are professions that slowly, almost invisibly, deform a woman's psychology. They change how she thinks, how she feels, how she perceives men, commitment, loyalty, value, and herself. And the most dangerous part is that these changes do not happen overnight. They happen quietly, gradually, under the surface, until one day the man looks at the woman next to him and realizes she is no longer the person he thought she was. That is why it is better to understand these risks in advance, rather than learn them through personal damage. If a woman works with a constant flow of people, problems are very likely to appear, especially if that flow consists mainly of women. Nail salons, lash studios, beauty salons, hairdressers, cosmetology clinics. Every single day she listens to dozens of female stories. Stories about cheating, stories about betrayal, stories about divorce, stories about abuse. One client complains that her husband is a tyrant. Another says her man is a liar. A third claims all men are useless. And what is important to understand is that nobody comes to these places to say, "My husband is reliable," or "My man keeps his word," or "I respect him and I love him." Women who are happy do not need to discuss their relationships. They do not need validation. They do not need to unload pain. They simply live their lives. The ones who talk are the ones who are hurt, angry, jealous, bitter, disappointed, or broken. All of this enters the mind of the woman who listens 8 hours a day. Her psyche absorbs it whether she wants it or not. And this psychological garbage is especially dangerous because a large part of it is exaggerated, distorted, or completely invented. Everyone tells their story in a way where they are the victim and the man is the villain. Over time, something subtle but destructive happens. 2 years pass, and she is no longer a light, warm, trusting girl. She becomes a container filled with other people's pain. She begins to believe that all men lie, all men cheat, all men eventually disappoint. This is not her personal experience, but it settles inside her as if it were. And then another layer appears: comparison. One client boasts about a new iPhone. Another shows photos from the Maldives. Another talks about a luxury gift or a new car. Meanwhile, she finishes her 6th client of the day, exhausted physically and emotionally. She walks home and starts thinking, "What has my man done for me lately? Why don't I have what they have? Am I living the wrong life? Am I settling for less?" Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she turns into a collection of other people's tragedies and other people's fantasies about life. Building a stable family on that foundation becomes extremely difficult, because she is no longer living her own emotional reality. Now consider women who work with a constant flow of men: receptionists, bartenders, gym staff, club workers, car dealerships, sales consultants. What happens here is even more intense. Every day someone approaches her. Every day someone asks for her number. Every day someone invites her for coffee. Every day someone undresses her with their eyes. 50 are too shy but smile. Another 100 scan her with their eyes and imagine how to approach. After a few years, her mind develops automatic mechanisms. She knows exactly how to reject men instantly. She becomes a professional at it. She has heard every compliment in existence, in different languages, with perfect grammar and with Google-translated mistakes. Attention becomes excessive, and excessive attention always turns into devaluation. When a woman is treated like a goddess every single day, do not be surprised when she starts looking at men from above. Even if you hold the keys to an expensive car, she may calmly say that she has seen 5 men like you this month. The problem is not beauty itself. The problem is the environment where beauty is constantly reinforced. This environment reshapes perception. Value shifts. What once felt rare becomes ordinary. What once felt impressive becomes boring. If a woman's beauty is monetized in any form, advertising, promotions, exhibitions, brand events, expect serious problems. Her appearance becomes a tool. Her self-worth starts to depend on looks, desire, lust, and attention. A hungry male gaze becomes a small injection, a microdose of pleasure. She will never admit this openly. She will say she likes working with people. She enjoys communication. She loves being social. But translated honestly, it means she likes being wanted. Trying to isolate such a woman, to remove her from that environment, does not solve the issue. It only starts a countdown. At home, withdrawal begins almost immediately. Gifts and travel may distract her for a while, but eventually she feels invisible. And a woman addicted to attention will always go looking for it again. The fastest source of that attention is almost never her husband. A woman used to being desired does not want to be merely loved. To her, that feels like a downgrade. Creative professions carry their own risks. Actresses, singers, performers, models, anyone whose work is built on emotion, passion, drama, and expression. These people live on emotional swings. They feed on intensity. If drama does not exist, they create it. Conflicts, breakups, cheating, emotional chaos. These are not tragedies for them. They are material. For most creative people, emotions come first, and stability comes last. Calm, quiet, predictable life feels empty to them. Such women do not live life, they perform it. And a man in their life often becomes just another character in the story. Once he becomes predictable, readable, familiar, the search for a new drama begins. The old man is discarded, not because he is bad, but because he no longer produces emotion. Professions involving physical contact create another layer of risk. Massage therapists, spa workers, fitness trainers. Boundaries slowly blur. Constant physical contact weakens internal limits. When temptation passes through hands, eyes, and proximity every single day, it becomes a question of time. Not weeks, not months, just time. Exposure eventually produces results, regardless of intentions. Women whose primary focus is business and career often value autonomy above everything else. You do not walk together, you move in parallel. She does not see you as a leader, she sees you as a partner or a competitor. Family becomes secondary. Sometimes it becomes nothing more than an accessory. Power struggles become normal. Decisions turn into negotiations. Leadership turns into conflict. Very often, career success matters more to her than being a good wife or mother. Her sense of self-worth is tied to achievements, not relationships. When a woman knows deep down that she is not capable of giving warmth, care, and emotional presence, she often starts devaluing those roles. Motherhood and domestic life become something she looks down on, not because they are inferior, but because admitting their importance would expose her own limitations. If a woman is a psychologist or a coach, caution is essential. In relationships, she often places herself in the role of judge and authority. Her opinion becomes truth. Yours becomes irrelevant. Any disagreement turns into an analysis of your traumas, your insecurities, your childhood wounds. Not to solve the problem, but to dominate. She believes her diploma grants her authority over reality. Living with someone who always knows better, who always interprets your behavior through theory, is mentally exhausting. In such dynamics, the man is rarely seen as a source of strength. Leadership is often treated as something primitive or toxic. To coexist, the man must either submit or constantly justify himself through external authorities. Female athletes represent another psychological profile. Sports require high dopamine levels. Victory, defeat, competition, adrenaline. When life revolves around performance and results, the nervous system adapts to constant stimulation. Transitioning from that lifestyle to family routine is brutal. From medals to diapers, from crowds to silence. The psyche experiences withdrawal. Emotional hunger appears. And when legal sources of stimulation disappear, alternative ones are often sought. Photography, especially when it involves provocative imagery, introduces another subtle risk. When a woman constantly participates in environments where sexuality is normalized, displayed, and aestheticized, her value system adjusts accordingly. What once felt intimate becomes ordinary. What once felt private becomes public. Over time, moral boundaries soften, not because she is bad, but because constant exposure reshapes perception. It is important to understand something fundamental. This is not about labeling women as good or bad. This is about understanding risk. Human psychology is plastic. Environment shapes character far more than people like to admit. A person becomes what they breathe in every day. Even the most moral individual placed in a corrupt environment will eventually change. Even the most cynical individual placed in a disciplined environment will eventually soften. This is not ideology. It is observation. That is why profession matters. Not because it defines who someone is, but because it defines what shapes them daily. People often believe character is fixed and environment is secondary. In reality, it is the opposite. Character is flexible. Environment is dominant. When choosing a woman, it is not enough to look at her beauty, her charm, or her words. You must look at the conditions that shape her mind, her habits, her expectations, and her perception of men. Ignoring this does not make you noble. It makes you vulnerable. This is not fear-mongering. This is realism. Patterns repeat whether people like them or not. Awareness does not guarantee safety, but ignorance almost guarantees regret.